Shall we start, sir?
Please start.
Okay. Uh, Good evening, colleagues and my dear fellows. Myself, Dr. Samir Padi. I'm going to present my topic today, that is immunization in immunocompromised children. So this is my first webinar, so I might make some mistakes and I might fumble. So please bear with that. So, as we know, immunity is the ability of the human body to tolerate indigenous or self material and to eliminate foreign or non-self material. Basically, immunity, that is the factor which provides protection from microbes, since microbes are the identified as foreign material. So, yeah, immunity we can we're just going to the through the basics. We all know the acquired, that is adaptive, and innate, that is inborn. So acquired adaptive, that can be active and passive, and innate, that is present in the body itself. So active immunity, that is produced by body's own immune system in response to a pathogen introduced either naturally or by injecting some antigen to the body. So naturally through the infections that we acquired after birth. So usually it is antigen specific, long lasting, and often lifelong, and develops a memory for subsequent infection. While the passive immunity, that is transfer of a preformed antibody from exogenous sources, either human or animal, and it provides immediate protection but is temporary. So uh, factors that affect the immune response. Some of these are agent factor, that is nature of the antigen, live or killed, a dose, route of administration, presence of adjuvants. Host factor, that is age of the person, and the nutritional factor, as we know, malnourishment or malnutrition is a hindrance for development of good immunity. Then the genetics of the person, genetic makeup, competency of the immune system of the person, and coexisting diseases. Let's go back to the basics of the vaccine. So vaccines are exogenous antigen which, when introduced in an unexposed body, induces immune response to that particular antigen. It can be live attenuated, that is weakened, or inactivated, that is whole cell or fractional. And the fractionals can be protein based or polysaccharide based. So the basics of immunization, we all know, but going through it again. The vaccination is the process of inoculating the vaccine or antigen into the body. Immunization, that can be active or passive. Immunization is the successful induction of immune response by the vaccine, resulting in formation of cell mediator or antibody, that is humoral immunity. So, and passive immunization, admission of immunoglobulins or antisera, this is not same as vaccination. So, various routes of administration by injectable method, that is intradermal, we give BCG and IPV. Subcutaneous, we give measles and MMR. Intramuscular, we give TPT and hepatitis B. Oral route is for oral polio vaccine, and intranasal route has been influenza vaccine has been given through intranasal route. And in near future, probably vaccine for COVID 19 will also be available in through intranasal route. So immunoresponse to the vaccine. When the vaccine is given, how the body reacts to it. There is antigenic stimulus cause proliferation of B cells into plasma cells. B cells, with help from T helper cells, T helper 2 cells to form antibodies, IgM to IgG, IgD, and IgA. And APCs, that is antigen processing cells, are B cells and macrophages and dendritic cells. They process antigens, and through measure histocompatibility complex, activate antigen specific T cells. So in this process, the toll-like receptors or TLRs are it is also important. These are proteins playing major role in innate immunity. They're present on dendritic cells. They recognize the antigens, setting up the danger signal. They act as pattern recognition receptors (PRR) for vaccine and natural pathogens. So the vaccines can be live or non-live. Live attenuated vaccines, they use whole cell or viral or bacterial antigen. They're rendered inactive. They induce higher immune response, develop memory cell, produce longer immunity, and adjuvants are not usually required. They trigger innate immune system effectively. They permit TLR requisition, and single dose usually sufficient. While non-live vaccines, they use cell components like proteins, polysaccharide toxoids taken up locally by phagocytes and usually spread by lymphatics. Poor activation of innate immunity. Repeated boosters may be needed to maintain sufficient antibody level, and they require adjuvants. No toll-like receptor, since no T cell activation and no memory cell formation occurs. So now coming to the topic, that is immunization in an immunocompromised child. So who is the immunocompromised child? A child, an intact immune system is basis of all immunization, but the child with defective or some deficient immune function, uh, they are known as immunocompromised child. There is a unique challenge for vaccination. Why? Because the immune response is not sufficient in response to the antigen introduced. So a more number of or higher doses may be necessary. Live vaccines, they pose a safety challenge, and requirements varies case to case basis. So certain drugs like steroids or antivirals may interfere with vaccine efficacy also. So when we suspect immunocompromised or immunodeficient child, it is important also. Uh, when such child may have family history of early infant death or known immunity disorders. Uh, in certain situations, child may present with unusual or chronic infections like one or more systemic infections, sepsis, bacterial meningitis in a year, two or more serious respiratory or bacterial infections in a year, serious infections at unusual sites like liver, brain abscess, infections with unusual pathogens like Pneumocystis jirovecii, Aspergillus ceratiae, Nocardia, Burkholderia, like this. So, and common childhood infections, but with unusual severity. So, if these are the findings, then we can suspect that the child might be having immunodeficiency. So, certain clinical spectrums that the child might present as, like recurrent URTIs, respiratory tract infections, severe bacterial infections, persistent infections with incomplete or no response to therapy, and paucity of lymph nodes and tonsils. So often present features are persistent sinusitis or mastocytitis, recurrent bronchitis or pneumonia, failure to thrive or growth retardation in infants and children, intermittent fever, skin lesions like rashes, pyoderma seborrhea, and abscess, recalcitrant oral thrush, chronic or recurrent diarrhea with malabsorption, hearing loss due to chronic otitis media, arthralgia, arthritis, chronic conjunctivitis, bronchiectasis, hematologic presentation may be aplastic anemia or neutropenia, and certain autoimmune disorders also. And occasionally present features might be lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly, severe viral diseases like Epstein-Barr virus, CMV, HSV, varicella, chronic encephalitis, recurrent meningitis also might be a presenting feature. Deep infections like osteomyelitis, organ abscesses, chronic GI diseases like infestations, screw-like syndromes, autoimmune diseases, AITP, hemolytic anemia, and pyoderma gangrenosum, and delayed umbilical detachment in newborn period. That might be an early indication for LAD, that is leukocyte adhesion defect. So what are the types of immunodeficiency? As we have already seen in previous presentation, there are to be primary and secondary. Primary immunodeficiencies are inheritable genetic disorders that disrupt immune cells qualitative or quantitatively in the performance of the functions, while secondary immunodeficiencies are often part of or associated with other diseases or conditions in which either due to certain medications or due to the nature of the disease, the immunity our immune response or the immunity of the subject is reduced. Like in nephrotic syndrome, steroid or long-term steroid therapy is used. In organ transplant, also immunosuppressive therapies are used. And in diseases like HIV and malnutrition, also there is per se immune deficiency. So these all should be taken into consideration. The primary immunodeficiency, it is also known as inborn errors of immunity. The classification, that is IUIS 2019 classification of category, I have given here for academic purpose. So, uh,
For this talk, we are going to skip and we will discuss it phenotypically briefly. And in later talks, we are going to discuss the topic as primary immunodeficiency in itself.
okay, sir. Yes, sir. So, coming back to common pathogens that will encounter in a primary immunodeficiency state. In antibody deficiencies, there will be common pathogens will be Streptococcus pneumoniae, Haemophilus influenza, Staph aureus, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Mycoplasma species, and Salmonella species, Shigella species, Campylobacter, rotavirus, enterovirus, and Giardia species. While in cellular and combined immunodeficiencies, Mycobacteria, then Strep pneumoniae, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Candida, Pneumocystis jirovecii, herpes virus, adenovirus. These are the common pathogens. In complement deficiencies, we'll see capsulated organisms like Strep pneumoniae, influenza, and Neisseria species. Then phagocyte deficiencies, we'll find Staph aureus, Nocardia species, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Serratia, enteric gram negative bacilli, Candida species, and Aspergillus species. Okay. Next, secondary immunodeficiency. As we know, it is usually acquired or part of other systemic disease, which may include symptoms in diseases like HIV/AIDS, splenectomy, malignant neoplasm, organ transplant, or immunosuppressant therapy, and receiving anti-metabolite or radiotherapy. So, in these cases, so this is how the clinical evaluation should be done. In the history, age at onset of infection, number and frequency and periodicity of infection, nature of infections like location, and if any previous reports are available in organisms, and severity, duration, nature and duration of therapy that has been given, response to therapy, how did the child respond to the therapy given, history of his hospitalizations, previous hospitalizations, history of any surgery, growth pattern of the child, periodontal diseases, or any history of allergy, immunization, exposure history. All this should be collected. Family history, if there is known previous known case of immunodeficiency in the family, recurrent severe or unusual infections, or any early deaths, autoimmune disease, or allergy and history of consanguinity, or any if, is the child missing school days, or and why the child has missed, because and that will give an idea to the chronicness of the disease. And immunization, now coming, what are the challenges in immunocompromised child? As I had already uh, spoken in the previous slide, immune response is less and unreliable. So higher doses or more number of doses may be required. Live vaccines for the child risk of disseminated infection is present due to the live agent. Certain live vaccines contraindicated in household contacts also, because they might cause infection in the subject. Live virus vaccine is avoided till 3 months after completing chemotherapy, and 1 month after high dose steroid therapy for more than 14 days. So antiviral drugs can interfere with live viral vaccines. These are things that we should keep in mind while thinking about immunization in a child. And vaccine requirement is individual specific. It is tailor-made and not like standardized like other children. So coming to immunization in certain specific conditions of immunodeficiency, we have humoral or B lymphocyte deficiency, where there is severe antibody deficiency, usually OPV, smallpox, and live attenuated influenza vaccine and BCG. These are the live vaccines, so these are all contraindicated. And a live oral typhoid vaccine is also contraindicated. Specific indication vaccines are pneumococcal and trivalent inactivated uh, influenza vaccine. Then measles and varicella vaccines they can be considered. Less severe deficiencies, where there is a less severe antibody deficiency, or like selective IgA deficiency or IgG subclass deficiencies. Here, OPV, BCG, and or live oral typhoid are contraindicated, and specifically pneumococcal influenza and TIV, that is influenza inactivated vaccine, that is specifically indicated. Then coming to T lymphocyte or that is cellular and humoral defect. Where there is a complete deficiency, that is like severe combined immunodeficiency or complete Diger syndrome. We'll have all live vaccines that are contraindicated, including bacterial and viral vaccines. And specific indications are pneumococcal vaccines and influenza vaccines. While in partial defects like other Diger syndromes and Whisker-Hartley syndrome, all live vaccines, viral and bacterial, they are contraindicated. And in specific indication, pneumococcal, meningococcal, Haemophilus, the HIV vaccine, and influenza vaccine, these are indicated. Now coming to complement defect. In complement defect, no vaccine is contraindicated. Whilst in addition to the routine vaccines, pneumococcal, meningococcal, and influenza vaccines, they are specifically indicated. And in phagocytic function defect, we'll have chronic granulomatous disease like chronic granulomatous disease, leukocyte adhesion defect, and such conditions where live bacterial vaccines are contraindicated, including BCG and oral live typhoid. Specific indication, it will be influenza vaccines, that is trivalent inactivated influenza vaccine, and pneumococcal vaccine, except in chronic granulomatous disease. Okay. In case of HIV/AIDS, with vaccines that are contraindicated, that will be OPV, smallpox, BCG, live attenuated influenza vaccine, MMR and varicella in severely immunocompromised, where CD4 count is less than equal to 15%. And if heart, that is a highly active antiretroviral therapy already started, then MMR and varicella should be deferred till viral load comes down to less than 50 copies per ml and CD4 population rises above 15%. And specific indications are influenza vaccine, that is trivalent inactivated vaccine, and pneumococcal vaccine, and if not already given in infancy, that should be given, and meningococcal vaccines. These are specifically indicated. These are some other conditions where we'll see what are the vaccines that will be indicated and what are the contraindications. In case of malignant neoplasm, organ transplant, or radiation therapy, if these are the situation in the case scenario, then BCG, oral typhoid salmonella typhi vaccine, that is type 21A, MMR, OPV, LIV, yellow fever, varicella, including MMRV and zoster. Uh, these are indicated, contraindicated, depending upon the immune status of the child. And the specific indications that are supposed to be given are influenza, TIV, and pneumococcal vaccine. And in cases of asplenia, no vaccine is contraindicated, and all routine vaccines should be given, plus meningococcal, pneumococcal, and HIV. If not to be given in infancy, this should be completed. Then in case of chronic renal diseases where the child is on steroid and everything, the live attenuated influenza vaccine it's contraindicated, and while the pneumococcal influenza and hepatitis B, these are specifically indicated vaccines. When it's a case of hematopoietic cell transplant recipient, then what are the factors that will affect the immunization? It is donor's immunity status and type of the transplant, that is autologous or allogenic. Then blood or hematopoietic stem cell transplant or interval since transplant, and presence of graft versus host disease, immunosuppressive medication. So type of vaccine, it could be inactivated or subunit vaccines like pertussis, HIV, influenza, and pneumococcal and meningococcal conjugate and polysaccharide vaccines that include PCV13 and PCV23 vaccines, then main B and main SCWI. This is the strain that should be included. And about the timing, it can be administered until 5 weeks after the transplant. Now, in solid organ transplant, all routine vaccines to be completed before organ transplant, and live vaccines should be given at least 1 month before transplant. Passive immunization on the basis of serological evidence in presence of any disease, the specific antibody can be given, and household contact and healthcare contacts should have been protected with MMR, varicella, polio, and influenza, and hepatitis A. But normal siblings should not receive OPV. As you know, OPV is a live vaccine which is excreted via stool also, so it might again come back to the subject. So this was my presentation, and the references I have taken IAP textbook of pediatric infectious disease second edition, Nelson textbook of pediatrics 20th edition, and IUS 2019 update. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pandi. There is one suggestion by Dr. Rashna.
Yes.
She says that now quadrivalent influenza vaccines are available.
Yeah,
So I will.
yes. I was going to tell about that. In case of TIV, QIV can be opted because it is available now.
Yeah. What should be the time interval for vaccination after IVIG?
After IVIG, there should be a period of 6 weeks. I think that is the time period one should wait for vaccination.
Okay. And can you briefly discuss about the type of vaccination errors which a doctor should look out? I mean, for younger clinicians, what kind of things a doctor should check before he or she starts vaccinating a kid, any child, any age, any compromise, any immune status?